So this week's Torah portion is Vayakel, next week is Pekude. And the reason why I just wanted to mention the portion of the week, or the portion which will actually be next week's Torah portion, but they're both about the same topic, which is the tabernacle, the building of the tabernacle. At the same time, this Torah portion talks about, we're still talking about the revelation at Sinai. We're talking about the golden calf. It's an exciting topic. And then we're talking about forgiveness, where Moshe basically advocates for the Jewish people and asks God to forgive them after the sin of the golden calf. But what happens after that is we go into more detail about what happens with the tabernacle and the collection of the materials needed for this very elaborate and very descriptive sanctuary that is temporary and that will be traveling with the Jewish people in the end for 40 years in the desert. And three of the materials used are gold, silver, and copper. What's interesting is, obviously gold is gold and silver, and copper is kind of insignificant in theory next to gold and silver. So there's a discussion, or the Torah reads about this copper basin that is actually the shiniest of all of the metals that were used for the tabernacle. And the question is, what's significant about this copper basin, and why was it so shiny? Why was it so take so much, almost like precedence as far as the metals? And it turns out that the copper basins were they were donated by the women, and they were made from the mirrors that the women used when they were in Egypt. And the story is that although Pharaoh had switched the roles for men and women, and men were doing what they were doing and women were doing the role of men, and even so they were exhausted. The men were depressed and depleted. The women went into the fields to meet their husbands. They brought their copper mirrors, beautified themselves, and essentially made sure that there was another generation of Jews to leave Egypt. And so the question was, when they brought these copper mirrors to the collection, because everybody had to contribute and they wanted to bring these mirrors, Moses balks, and he's like, they were used, we're talking about the sanctuary for God, and you're bringing these copper mirrors that were used for basic needs, and to put it lightly. And God says to Moses, these mirrors, they're the most precious to me than everything else that has been contributed to the tabernacle, because what they signify is the ability to take something that's coarse in a certain way and use it and elevate it for a divine purpose. And so when we talk about AI and we talk about artificial intelligence, we think about, there's a lot of concerns. I have concerns. Medicine and AI, and what's that going to mean? How do we kind of grapple with this idea of something that's artificial and at the same time we're humans, and how do we reconcile that? But we can see from such a beautiful story like this happening in the desert for the tabernacle, that everything, the end is in the beginning. So when God created the world, Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim v'aretz, and he created the world, all the way down to the revelation at Sinai, where it was the divinity, like the actual divine, God spoke to the Jewish people. It wasn't some things were godly and some things were divine, but everything in the world that God created, including artificial intelligence, is divine. And it's just a matter of how we use it, and just a matter of what we use it for. And in some ways, when we think about something artificial, it's so far from divinity and so far from revelation, but it's not, and it's included. And so I'm really excited to hear about what you're going to be talking about tonight. But I wanted to throw in the Torah that we read. Torah translates as lesson or instruction. So when we think about Torah tziva lanu Moshe, that Moshe was commanded. Moshe commanded us the Torah, or commanded us to keep the Torah. This is what it means, that we can find insight in the portion of the week that happened thousands of years ago, and we can find insight today that is relevant to our lives. So welcome. We're looking forward, and I'm going to introduce Aaron and Alana to give formal bios of our speakers.
Sure.